5 years ago, when I had more hair and a green screen, I bought this. This is the Collective Minds Drive Hub, and essentially is able to mix and match multiple brands of sim racing to be used on a PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. When I was using this 5 years ago, my setup was completely different. I was using a Fanatec CSL Elite with Elite V1 pedals, T300 RS as well sometimes, and also a Trustmaster shifter. But since Gran Turismo 7 has had a massive physics overhaul and I want to be doing more content on Gran Turismo 7, and I don't want to be installing the Fanatec CSL Elite V2s every time I want to play Gran Turismo 7, even though I love those pedals, but I do own better pedals and most of them are compatible with this little thing. As good as a solution like this sounds, because it's incredibly flexible and compatible with lots of things, and we'll see the compatibility list in just a moment, it is not cheap. This is 90 British pounds, and you need something else. You do need a wired controller. I'm using this from Hori. It was the cheapest at the time, but when I bought this, it was 25 pounds. Now it's running on the 40s and 50s. I'm not sure about other solutions, but they do need to be wired, because if you use the PlayStation 5 controller or a PlayStation 4 controller or a PlayStation 3 controller, it is really not going to work, because even if it has a stable connection for a moment, it will then disconnect. So it does need to be USB wired. You can buy the Drive Hub from their own site. This is not a sponsored video. I bought this years ago, and it is compatible with the major consoles at the moment. So the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5, 4, and 3. There are a few modes that we need to take attention to. It is also compatible with most racing wheels at the moment from the major brands, namely Logitech, Trustmaster, and Fanatec. And with a Fanatec, it doesn't say the new Club Sport DD wheels, but it is compatible with the new Club Sport DD wheels. I have tested that. And also with Mozza, it's compatible with the Mozza R5. It is also possible, this is compatible with more wheels from Mozza and also from Asetek. But in terms of Asetek, I think you need to do some sort of workarounds, but don't take me on it. You'll have to do your own investigation on this. But for me, the important bit about all of this is not the compatibilities just with the wheelbases, because you really want to mix and match your stuff. Otherwise, just stick with one brand. It's basically it, and you'll never need to buy this. It's essentially the compatible USB accessory list that they have here. They have stuff from Trustmaster. I've used the Trustmaster TH8 in the past with the Fanatec wheelbase in this, and works perfectly. And also it's compatible with a bunch of handbrakes that are not Trustmaster, that are not Fanatec, and also a bunch of pedals, some of them which I own. And you can see you have new stuff like the Compe pedals. Compe has been in the market for like a year, and it's already compatible. The Club Sport pedals, as we know, Logitech pedal, Oisingveld pedals, and in my case, we do have access to the Sim Racing Pro SRP pedals and also the MSim Talento Sim pedals. A bunch of good pedals that I own at the moment, and using something like this, it's a step above from the Fanatec CSL Elite V2s. Also important, the compatibility list of titles, namely Assetto Corsa. It also is compatible with Assetto Corsa Competizione that I've been using, and also Gran Turismo 7. I've also used this on Gran Turismo 6 in the past. But in terms of experience, and you'll see what I'm talking about that later, it's going to really differ between titles and also between modes. Another downside to this is the cable spaghetti that will be natural by using something like this small hub. First of all, you'll have a console port, and a console port you'll connect the micro USB that goes directly into your PlayStation or Xbox. And then you have the controller ports, and you do need to connect the controller port here. Otherwise, there won't be a way to go to the PlayStation. Then you need to connect your steering wheel to the wheel/controller. Connected there. And of course, if you need to install a pedal, it goes to the accessory port. There's a small little trick that you can use on this accessory port if you want to use a shifter and end brake. Of course, there won't be physical ports for here. You can use a small USB hub and then connect everything to this small port, and everything will work as long as, of course, as it is supported. If you have everything correctly updated and installed, you'll be seeing on the Drive Hub's screen what you will have connected to the Drive Hub. In the case of the Club Sport DD Pro, which I'm using, it will be seen as a GTD Pro. And also because I have SRP pedals, it will be connected as SRP pedals. But if you also use a shifter installed at the back of your Fanatec wheelbase and a handbrake like I'm using, if you go to the steering control settings, you'll also be seeing the shifter and the handbrake. And as you can see, we also have the throttle, brake, and clutch with no problem whatsoever. And you can also do the calibration if you want to. For Fanatec wheels, there's a specific mode for Fanatec wheels that brings better force feedback, and we'll be talking a little bit about that in just a second. It's called the Fanalogic modes, and that is a really important point because, you know, use this because you want to have a good force feedback. The force feedback is decent. It is passable in Fanalogic modes or Fanatec modes. The force feedback compared to native is about 80% of the way, 85% of the way. You do lose a lot of functionalities, namely with the buttons, even on Fanatec mode. That means you'll be running this with different types of inputs if you want to access the other type of TC, if you want to use the ABS and all of that stuff. So you lose a lot of functionalities because it doesn't really not emulate correctly all of these inputs with Fanatec equipment, which is kind of important because if you buy a wheel from Fanatec, you really want to use everything, but sadly you basically lose half of the inputs, and that's, you know, a huge downgrade from the regular usability. The other part is the force feedback, which I said it's, you know, about 80%. You lose a lot of detail, even in Fanatec mode compared to native. You know, native is such a better experience. And here's the problem as well. If you do not have a Fanatec wheel and you use it with this drive hub, the experience is even worse because you can use this without the Fanatec modes, and it's basically incredibly clunky. You feel like you are going always over stones and all of that stuff, and the experience is okay, but you know, it's a huge downgrade compared to native, especially when you use Fanatec, and you can basically compare apples to apples. And this is basically on Gran Turismo 7, which will be where most of you will drive. If you have a Fanatec wheelbase, it will work very well. But if you don't have a Fanatec wheelbase, well, it works. It has force feedback. You feel, you know, the force feedback, but once again, it is incredibly clunky. The other game I wanted to try is this one, Assetto Corsa Competizione, because SimGrid now has seasons. It's essentially a new competitive mode system for the PlayStation, similar to Low Fuel Motorsports, and it will be interesting to, you know, do some content on it as well, because you might as well do something with PlayStation if you have it. However, even though the force feedback is incredibly similar between systems on the PlayStation 5 and also on the PC, and also even the PlayStation 4, believe it or not, even with the same settings that I have on the wheelbase and on the game, it will give me around 99% of the experience between them. You can split hairs because the PlayStation is inherently a little bit slower. You know, it is what it is. But on this modes, even on the Fanatec mode, doesn't matter if it's the Fanatec mode or not, the inputs are so twitchy. The force feedback is some of the force feedback in the world. It does feel that, you know, go over bumps, you over curbs, but it's incredibly grainy, much more grainy than the original Assetto Corsa Competizione, and also incredibly sensitive, and especially when you're using the Ferrari 296, which is my favorite car around here at Nordschleife. It is important to have something that is more or less a one-to-one representation of what you're already driving, because this is so twitchy that the wheel has some sort of acceleration, like when you go on the Gran Turismo 7 and you put your sensitivity to 10. This feels like it's sensitivity 11, 12, or 13, because you turn it, and you can see we're going to stop the car. You turn it, the wheel goes faster. then you turn. It takes a little bit of time. There's some sort of input delay, but then after the input delay, it will accelerate more than your input. It is something really strange, and it takes you by surprise. The force feedback will disconnect when the game, when you're stopped, which isn't really too bad. You probably can go around it in some settings in the game. If there's some settings in the game for that, that's not really an issue. But the force feedback works in a completely different logic than it does on a PC, and it's kind of jarring the way it works. In terms of buttons, well, that's another issue, because we do have a wheel that is, you know, fantastic for Assetto Corsa Competizione, believe it or not, which is, you know, essentially the GT, the Extreme. It has all of these buttons, or even the McLaren wheel that I've been using in the past. And, you know, the rotaries don't really work. Nothing really works. And it becomes, once again, a little bit difficult to justify the usability of Drive Hub, especially in a title like this, when you do need those inputs for a game like this. You need the TC and you need all of that stuff, and the compatibility isn't really there. And the force feedback, it's kind of jarring. It works, but, you know, there is some stuff here that doesn't work as well as it does in native mode. Should you buy this? Well, it really depends on what you have in mind and what's your use case, because there's a bunch of downsides besides the price, like I've stated. You know, in terms of loss of fidelity, especially with Fanatec wheels, it is quite a lot. You lose a lot of fidelity and features from the native mode, which, in my opinion, you know, well, you pay a little more for a set of load cell pedals and you get all the compatibility, but of course you won't have the flexibility. But if you don't have a Fanatec wheelbase, or you have a really good set of pedals and you can't be bothered changing it all the time, you know, just like myself, something like this, it becomes a little bit better, but the downsides are definitely too great. I do want to play more Gran Turismo 7, and, you know, changing pedals all the time isn't really that good. So something like this does help building more content faster. But for, you know, most people, I would say you need to really think about this. While it is a really good solution, it is a solution with plenty of downsides. So while it's good, buyer beware.